All right, guys, what's up? We're back out of the wild in the room. We're just chilling in the room. Shoulder day this morning. Got my cardio done already. I'm doing a little how to lean bulk properly video. How to do it and not get fat. How to do it and not be small. Just how to find the middle ground, because that's really what it comes down to, bro. Lean bulking is about that middle ground between becoming the obese beast and staying small in this skinny little piece of shit that you started at. As with many things fitness related, this is going to be person to person dependent. Not everything is going to be the same for every single human being out there. We all have different genetics, we all have different starting points, we all have different, ball sizes, etc. Let's go into scenario number one. You have no muscle mass and you also have no body fat. You are in prime state to become an absolute genetic phenom right here. You look at this and you're like, I don't want to look like that. Bro, if I looked like that, give me 1 year, I'm becoming like Chris Bumstead. Pretty much what you want to do here. Let's say you've never, you're just getting to the gym. You don't know anything. You've never tracked your calories before. What you want to do is go ahead and download MyFitnessPal. This is the first thing you want to do. You want to buy a scale. I'll make a checklist for you guys. Food. More food, lots of food. Do not change your eating habits for the first 2 weeks. Spend 2 weeks eating exactly what you would eat. Just track everything, weigh everything, track everything, put it into MyFitnessPal. Try to do it accurately. I know a lot of people, it takes a little bit of time to understand how to use these apps properly. So start tracking everything, and then every single morning, wake up, take a piss, step on the scale, check what your body weight is, write it down somewhere in a notebook. After those 2 weeks, look at your caloric intake. Find the average. Find what's the average amount of calories I consumed on a typical day, and then you want to look at your body weight. Scenario one, your body weight fluctuated around and stayed the exact same. You just found your maintenance calories by averaging out how many calories it takes to maintain your body weight, and then from there, you can just make adjustments as needed. So the first thing you're going to do, add in, I'd probably say 300, maybe even 400, maybe 500 calories. Because since you're a beginner, you can kind of get away with it. You have so much potential for gains. And one thing you need to understand about when you're starting out in this position right here is your gains versus gains potential ratio. As you get more experience into lifting, you make more and more gains. Your gains potential just starts to go down. So when you're in this position and you have 0 gains but maxed out gains potential, you want to make the most of what you can do. And assuming that you have basically no body fat on your body, you're not going to make the gains unless you fuel yourself properly. So what you need to do is actually eat in a caloric surplus. If I were in this situation right here, I would be closer to 500, 600, maybe pushing 700 if you're someone who just doesn't have a propensity to put on body fat as much as other people. Let's go back to the drawing board. All right, so let's run the numbers here. Let's say this right here is what you're consuming on your lean bulk. You have your maintenance calories, which if you did this experiment earlier with the body weight, the food scale, and MyFitnessPal, let's say you found your maintenance to be 2,500 calories, right? So what you're gonna do is, let's say you add 500. Now you are at 3,000 calories. So 2,500, 3,000 calories. This range right here is your caloric surplus. Since you have maxed out gains potential, you have so much muscle growth that's occurring that you're probably gonna use this whole freaking window right here for gains, whereas someone who's more experienced has more gains and is, maybe at this point in their gains potential, that's a smaller amount of gains they can make in, a day or a week or whatever. So they may only use this much of their surplus for gains, which means the rest right here is going towards fat. Whereas you, skinny little guy right here, you're making pure gains on these 500 calories just because there's so much more gains to fill up this surplus window. But if you're a little bit more experienced, then having this big surplus of 500 calories per day is going to result in all this excess fat gain. Whereas what you could have done, since your gains are capping out right here, is you can cut your surplus right here and eat in like a 200 calorie surplus, still make pretty much the same amount of gains, but without the fat gain. So that's going to be the discrepancy in your surplus size right there. The more gains you have, the smaller your surplus is going to have to be, unfortunately. So right here, you can get away with 500 to 700, most likely. These are just kind of ballpark numbers. Just keep that in mind. Don't take this verbatim and be like, okay, this means I need to eat 500 calories, or else I won't be making any gains at all. Or if I go even 1 calorie above 700, I'm going to be put on pure body fat. No, this is just kind of ballpark estimates. My physique here, a couple years into lifting, let's say, you know, I'm probably around here on the gains train, which means I get like, I don't know, 80% of the gains, maybe like probably a lot less, probably like 50% of the gains that I'd be making if I was a newbie, which means my surplus, you know, if I have a 500 calorie surplus, I'm cutting it right here. Gains and fat. This is really the max. So what I would probably do in this situation is bring my surplus down to like here and just cut it at like 250. We'll say 250 to 400, because if you're someone like me, you can kind of get away with a little bit extra calories and you won't put on much body fat. Let's go into scenario 3 here. This is me a couple years ago, peak bulk, but some people just genetically hold a lot more body fat and they just kind of, this is lean for them. No hate, bro. No hate. Like, this is, if this is what your lean looks like, fuck, bro. You're cooked. I hate to break it to you. But that is just how it is for some people. What I would do in this situation, because you really just don't want to put any fat on at all, you can actually get away with a negative surplus, which I think that's a deficit. That's a deficit. A deficit is the word I'm looking for. So the reason you can afford to be in a negative right here is because, let's take a look. What does it take to build muscle, guys? What does it take to build biceps? Shit, I gave him 2 sets of arms. My bad. What does it take to build muscle, guys, right? It takes energy. So if you're 100 pounds right here, there's not a lot of energy available on you to make muscle. So this guy right here, this is me. I don't know why I just called him this guy. It's literally me. I was like, I don't know, 170, maybe 180. Compare someone like this who's probably realistically 130 to 180. There's 50 more pounds on this guy of muscle than there is on this guy. And that muscle didn't come from nowhere. It came from energy. Pounds, increases in body weight need to come from energy. What's the main source of energy? Food, right? So to get from here to here, you need to eat a shit ton of food. There's no way around it, right? So the food makes energy, makes muscle. But nuanced scenario here, 200-pound fat fuck right here. This is kind of like what I look like here. I got some muscle though. I do have some muscle. Let's say I want to build more muscle because I'm unhappy. I want to be happier with biceps on top of my biceps, right? I need energy, and energy has to go into here. And where do we get energy from? Food, right? But food makes energy, which also makes body fat. Body fat is stored energy. This whole big circle right here is energy. So we can bypass the food and take the energy straight from here and go straight into the biceps on top of the biceps. It negates the need for food, since we already have the energy available that came from the food from like years ago. A lot of Chick-fil-A, a lot of Checkers. When you go to Checkers, you can actually get a sweet deal. You can get like a bunch of chicken nuggets, like about 20 of them with a side of fries for about $3. $3 Checkers meals is it all sitting in here, and we can just use that. We don't even need food. You could essentially starve max and still make gains. So in that case, you can even be in a deficit, because what you can be doing is burning some of this. This gets burnt just from being in a calorie deficit, and then the leftover is going into the muscles. So that's why you can afford to be in a deficit. You can be in, you know, really infinite, bro. Like, I don't even put a number. You can be negative infinity to, I don't know. If you just really want to make sure you're making gains and not missing out on anything, let's say 200 calories, like surplus tops. So negative infinity to 200, that's kind of your ballpark range there. Me, I would say go into like negative 250, maybe negative 500 of a deficit. If you're losing like half a pound a week, and still making strength gains in the gym, then you're chilling. If you're not making strength gains and you have the body fat to be like using it, then you're either not training hard enough, you're not training properly, or you have been dieting for so long and you need to take a diet break, or you're overtrained or something like that. But in most cases, you will still be making gains in a deficit. You're going to be putting on muscle. You're going to be getting stronger if you're anywhere above like 20% body fat. Last case scenario, this is me one day out. This right here is Michael Donato, my coach. He's a G. He got me all these badass clips when I was peeled. He's got curly hair, I think. Is he black, bro? Yo, Michael, are you black? I feel like you're like half black. I don't know. I feel like you gotta be like half black, half Italian or something. Anyway, let's say you're in this, you're stage lean, bro. All right, you're like 6% body fat. You're walking around campus. The huzz are actually probably not looking at you because I don't think chicks really dig it when you're that lean. I think they want you to be more like low key, bro. I probably pulled the most chicks when I was like this body fat percentage right here. My shit didn't even work at this body fat percentage, so I wouldn't recommend it. Anyway, let's say you're in this situation right here. You are not in a position to be building muscle. You probably have no testosterone. This is if you're natural. This is a guide for naturals, by the way, because as you can tell, I'm pretty fucking natural. Ready shreds, 6% body fat, a little bit of VAR. You look like you get the VAR for the huzz accusations, even though you're natty. Shredded glutes. Damn, bro. Look at that. I actually did have striated glutes. That's kind of fucking freaky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this gains graph. We're going to copy it over. And we're going to change one variable here. Instead of having gains on the bottom, we're going to have testosterone. Except it's fucking backwards. Hold on. Whoa, that's a thick fucking line. The more tests you have, the more gains you have. So this is going to get nuanced here. It's about to get a little bit crazy. Say normally your test is like right here. Your gains potential is right around here, which means you can, like I was saying before, get away with a pretty big surplus. But if your testosterone is like down here, you have basically no fucking gains potential. That means with this 500 calorie surplus, you're going to be making like this much gains and this much fat. And you know, you look at that on paper and you're like, well, shit, that means I need to be in a 20 calorie surplus, right? No, it's actually the opposite, because let's say you do that strategy, you do your 20 calorie surplus so that you can put on no body fat and pure gains. This gains potential is so small, the amount of time it's going to take to put on like 1 pound of muscle might be 3 years. To bypass this whole situation right here, you want to somehow get yourself back up here. You want to get to high gains potential. And the only way to get to high gains potential is to follow this test line right here and get your testosterone back up to here. Now, how do you get your testosterone back up? Naturally, putting on more fat. Hooray, we can get fat. We can eat Five Guys, we can eat Chick-fil-A, we can eat Crumble Cookie Bros. And that's what you should be doing, believe it or not. I know this sounds crazy, but the main thing you want to do is just get your testosterone back to normal so that you can get yourself to this point where your gains potential is back up. And instead of having this shitty ratio right here, you can get closer to like here. Make a lot of gains, put on a little bit of fat, and then instead of taking 18,000 years to build 1 pound of muscle, you got this much bigger, you know, gains per week window right here. Whereas, yeah, you put on a little bit of fat when you were shredded, and you're not shredded anymore, but you're making like so many more gains way faster than you would have if you just tried to stay at that body fat. This is where you can really get away with the biggest surplus. You want to probably do at least 600, anywhere to like 1,000, until you get to kind of this range right here. Then you ease back into that 250 to 400 calorie surplus range. Once you put on enough body fat, you can pull your surplus down. But you pretty much want to get out of this state as quickly as possible after your show. Now, when I say as quickly as possible, I don't mean as quickly as humanly possible, because that is unhealthy and you're going to develop mental issues. You're going to get everything is going to get fucked up if you go way too fast. But you do want to gain weight relatively quickly, and you need to understand it's not going to be pure muscle. You're not in an anabolic rebound state right here. You are in the worst state to build muscle possible. So you're going to put on body fat, and the sooner you understand that you're going to put on body fat before you're really going to put on muscle, the sooner you're going to start making gains, because you're going to be able to finally jump from this shitty thing to this over here and start making bigger gains. Surplus sizes, pretty much complete. Super skinny guy, about 500 to 700. Experienced, relatively lean individual, 250 to 400. Fat fuck, negative infinity to positive 200, stage lean 600 to 1K. And these are per day surpluses, okay? So we went over surplus size. Now let's go over training. So this is our surplus, right? Just for reference, we'll say it's a 500 calorie surplus. Let's say you don't train. Let's say you eat in this surplus, you're lean bulking, but you don't train whatsoever. You're creating absolutely zero demand for muscle growth. This whole window is gonna be fat. Because why is your body gonna put on muscle if you're not telling it you're gonna put on muscle? Whatever surplus size you choose, you can choose a 1 calorie surplus, you can choose an 8,000 calorie surplus. It's basically all going to be fat if you're a natural. Now there's some nuanced examples of like, yeah, maybe if you have really high test, a little bit is gonna be muscle even without training, but you're probably not that guy. So in another case, you do kind of, you're training, but it's half-assed. You go to the gym like 3 days a week. You don't really track your lifts. You're not really progressive overloading. You're like working hard, kind of. The demand you're creating for muscle growth, your volume's so low that it's like half of what it could be. So instead of this being all fat, you're at least making a little bit of gains. You're creating maybe this much potential for gains, which means, you know, a little bit of gains. If you're eating that 500 calorie surplus, you're still putting on a lot of fat right here. So that's unfortunate because that means the more fat you get, the more fat you are. And I don't really know, I'm not gonna elaborate more. Nobody wants to be a fat fuck. So gains, if you're half-assing your training, are gonna be smaller and your fat's gonna be bigger. Now, let's say B to W style. Okay, this is a term I coined. I didn't tell anyone about it yet, so you guys are the first to know. This basically means balls to the wall. Balls to the wall manic style, okay? Like freaky. You're getting crazy with it. In this scenario, I want to imagine that you are training 2 times per day, 30,000 sets per workout. You just way too much volume to recover from, which means just like half-ass training, in that first week you might make crazy gains, but on average, your gains are going to cap out here because you can't recover that well. Once again, that means you're going to start putting on a lot more body fat in that calorie surplus. Now, let's say flawless training. You are doing the right amount of volume, which I'll get into in a moment. You're not overtraining. You know how to recover properly. You're going to be making a lot of gains, pal. You're going to be making like this much gains, which means this is what I'm trying to stress here. And I know this seems like I'm not getting at anything. What this means is less body fat, which is why we're talking about this in the first place. Lean bulking. This small window right here is essentially what differentiates a dirty, unclean, messy bulk to a lean bulk. So there are so many different scenarios that negate your bulk from being lean. One being not using this gains potential graph accordingly, and you end up with way too big of a surplus for your level of experience. 2 being you're way too low testosterone and you're just making like no gains, putting on a ton of fat. Yes, you're supposed to be doing that. That's what you're supposed to do for that small window. Now, the first few weeks of a bulk, when you're this low body fat, I wouldn't call it a lean bulk. I'd call it getting fat phase, but that's what you're supposed to do. And then the last thing that turns your bulk from a lean bulk to a fat bulk is if you're not training hard enough or you're not recovering properly. But if your training is on point, you're going to be making a lot of gains and minimal fat gain. I'm not going to go too deep into recovery in this video because that's not what this is about. But essentially, the recovery principle applies the same way the training principle applies. If your recovery is half-assed, that means you're going to be making this much gains and this much fat gains. If your recovery is, there's no really balls to the wall manic style recovery unless you're just like, all right, there is actually, now that I think about it. Let's say you're one of these like Andrew Huberman gets in the ice bath after they train, they sleep 8,000 hours, do all this crazy wackadoodle shit. If you're doing too much, sometimes some of this stuff actually inhibits growth. So particularly cold exposure after training reduces a lot of the good inflammation you just created during training and is going to cause less hypertrophy. So if you're going balls to the wall manic style ice bath and doing all this stuff to reduce the inflammation that you intentionally created during training, you're going to run into this scenario again. Your gains are small and your fat gain is huge. Inflammation, acute short-term inflammation after training is a good thing. You do not want to limit inflammation. Anything that kind of like decreases soreness for the most part, and this might sound crazy, is going to decrease your gains a little bit. You know, taking like lots of Advil, like acetaminophen, stuff like that after training, around your training window, to try to reduce inflammation, like improve recovery. You're doing too much and you're gonna make less gains, put on more fat. Let's say your recovery is flawless. You're sleeping around 8 to 9 hours every night, same time window, doing everything properly in terms of recovery, which, like I said, I'm not going to go over, but you're going to be making a lot of gains, which means so much less of that surplus is left for fat. If you have all three things in check, diet, training, and recovery, that is the key to a lean bulk right there. Those are the main three factors at play. The thing I'll see a lot of people talk about is, cardio on the bulk makes you leaner, stuff like that. Like, doing like no seed oils makes you leaner on the bulk. Or like, yeah, I'm doing a clean bulk, I'm eating only whole foods, I'm not touching sugar, I'm not touching any of this stuff, it's gonna make me leaner. It's not. The reason being, body fat accrual is fully dependent on the combination of your surplus size and the demand for muscle growth. Whatever your surplus size is, whatever that is not getting used for muscle growth is getting used for body fat. There's two things your body is going to be using this energy for: body fat or muscle growth. There's no really third option that creates any like nuance. It's a very black and white thing, no racism, but essentially if you just mitigate your surplus size and make sure that you're making the most amount of gains possible, you're good to go. You don't need to worry about anything else, really. You don't need to do cardio on a lean bulk. There are a million reasons why you should do cardio on a bulk. I will always advocate doing cardio on a bulk. Keeps your heart healthy, makes you better at cardio for when you do need to cut. You're not going to need to like start it from square one and be like, holy shit, my joints are insanely fatigued, I can't keep this up. If you do it year round, it's so easy and it just becomes part of your routine. But cardio is not like inherently going to make you leaner. Let's say your surplus size is like 700, 3K is your maintenance, and then 3,700 is what you're eating. So you have a 700 calorie surplus. Let's say your gains potential is maxed out here at like 250. So maybe you're like a little bit more experienced, you're kind of in the sweet spot of 10 to 12 body fat. This is really all the gains you can make, and the rest of this is fat. Run the numbers on that, Jarvis. So we ran the numbers, and this is another 450 calories right here going straight to body fat. Let's say you add in cardio that burns 300 calories per day. That pulls this line right here, your surplus, all the way down to here, which only leaves room for, so 150. Which only leaves room for 150 calories worth of fat gain. In that case, yes, doing the cardio is making you leaner on the bulk because it's creating a smaller surplus and therefore mitigating the fat gain. But what you could have done if you didn't really want to do cardio at all, eat 3,400 calories instead of 3,700 calories, and then you're still in this same window, 250 calories worth of muscle gain, 150 calories worth of fat gain. Or better yet, if you really just wanted to nail it, you could just eat 3,250 and pretty much make purely gains with no fat. That's not how it works in practicality. For the record, you're probably gonna put on a little bit of fat. The same effect that you achieve through doing cardio, you can also achieve through eating less. So it's not the cardio that's making you leaner. It probably is for a lot of people because it's in their scenario, it's just making their surplus size smaller. But you can also just eat less if you really don't want to do cardio. There's another nuance that we got to talk about. Now, the other myth I see people talk about all the time is all this seed oils, like whole foods, no sugar, I'm only eating whole clean foods. I'm an advocate for whole foods, right? But at the end of the day, protein, carbs, fats, these are the three macronutrients. There are no other macronutrients. If you're hitting, I don't care what anyone says, I think you need at least 1 gram per pound. If you're hitting 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein, 0.3 is the rule of thumb for fats, but I like to say 0.5. If you're hitting 0.5 grams of fats per pound of body weight, then you are basically checking all your boxes in terms of muscle growth with the protein and hormonal health with the fats. The rest is just filled with carbs. Let's say your calories are, let's use this exact scenario above right here. So you want to eat 3,250 calories to really nail that. Pure gains, no fat, like nothing. So say you're 200 pounds, just to make things easy. That means you need 200 grams of protein, 100 grams of fat. Protein is going to be 4 calories per gram, which means you have 800 calories worth of protein that you need to eat. Fat is going to be 900 calories per gram, which means you have 900 calories of fat you need to eat in your diet. 800 plus 900 means to check all your boxes in terms of muscle growth, and hormonal health, you're eating 1,700 calories, right? That's a lot of fucking wiggle room. 3,250 to 1,700. The rest is going to get filled in with carbs, ideally. If carbs will fuel your workouts, they will give you energy, and the more energy you have during your workouts, the more gains you're going to make. So you don't want to be trying to limit carbs. You want to try to fit as many carbs in your diet as possible while also checking all your other boxes. So 3,250 minus 1,700, let's run the numbers again, 1,550. Holy fark, brah. 1,550 calories worth of carbs. Divide that by 4 to get our grams of carbs, because carbs are 4 calories per gram. 387.5. 387 grams of carbs. So now you have your macros. 200 grams protein, 387 grams carbs, 100 grams fats. Obviously, it's going to fluctuate a little bit day to day, unless you're an absolute psychopath. So first of all, this debunks anyone that's like, yeah, I try to keep my carbs low on the bulk for insulin sensitivity or whatever. That's fucking stupid. You want carbs to fuel your workouts. So once you check your boxes with protein and fats, the rest you should fill in with carbs. So we have determined that macros do matter. Everything really just goes back to this bar of looking at your surplus and looking at how much is used for gains, how much is used for fat. If your macro split is way off and you're like under eating protein, obviously you're gonna make less gains, which means small gains, big fat. Same thing goes for your fats. If your fats are way too low, then what's gonna happen is go over to your testosterone graph here. You're going to be at the lower end of this testosterone graph. You're going to have low gains potential. Low gains potential, as we already know, means small gains, big fat. Make sure you're eating enough protein. Make sure you're eating enough fat. With fats, I recommend, try to get a variety of healthy fats in. But what about micros? Yes, they also matter. Not as much as macros, but they do matter. Let's say you're deficient in 80% of the micronutrients, like vitamins and minerals or whatever it is. You may not recover as well. If you have half-assed recovery, you're going to be making less gains, more fat. Same thing goes for if your micros are deficient and you're just not feeling like you have enough energy because maybe you're just vitamin D deficient or something. That's going to contribute towards half-assed training, small gains, big fat. Micronutrient deficiency equals you're not lean bulking. Now, what do I recommend for micros? Just eat fruits and vegetables multiple times per day, and then make sure that the fats that you do eat are coming from a variety of different healthy sources like olive oil, avocados, whole eggs are a big one, nuts are pretty good, nut butters. Once those boxes are checked, your protein, your fats, your micronutrients, your training, your recovery, your surplus size, everything else kind of just goes out the window. Once you've established where you are on this gains and fat ratio, as long as your gains are high and your fat is low, it doesn't matter whether your excess calories come from Nutella as a fat source or olive oil as a fat source. Same thing with carbs. You can have cereal as a carb source or you can have potato as a carb source. It's not going to make a difference. It's all kind of getting utilized the same way by your body. A lot of times it doesn't really know the difference between these other things. I don't recommend you get all your carbs from Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Rice Krispie treats, especially if you're someone who has a high appetite, because you're just going to end up not feeling satiated and you're going to end up feeling need to eat way more food than what is your targeted, 3,250 in this scenario. You may eat 3,700 and put on more fat. Yeah, there's different scenarios if you're like have a blood sugar thing, you're insulin sensitive or whatever, you're diabetic. Yeah, different carb sources are going to be healthier or unhealthier for you. But the name of the game here, guys, is once your boxes are checked, it's a free-for-all. You can do whatever you want, especially if you're if you're someone like me I'm 6'3", I'm eating 4,000 calories right now on my lean bulk, and I'm like not even really gaining weight. I need to go up to 4,200. Checking your boxes on 4,000 calories is so insanely easy. It's difficult for me to stay under 300 grams of protein. So once I've hit my protein, once I've hit my fats, once I've made sure that the fats I did consume were from a variety of healthy fat sources, getting omega-3s, omega-6s, I've had my fruits and vegetables for the day, I can eat whatever I want essentially. I do. I'll have a piece of candy and I'll have like a bowl of cereal. The whole seed oil thing, the whole processed sugar, like processed foods, this one gets me a little upset when people are like, yeah, you don't want to eat processed foods, you want to stay away from processed foods and you want to stay lean. Why? Every food is processed. Every food has been put through some sort of process. Like if you can't provide an inherent reason for why it's going to make you fat on the bulk, then shut the fuck up. So yeah, guys, that's the full lean bulking guide. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something. Hope this prevents you from getting obese this winter. and makes the shred for the summer 10 times easier, because the whole name of the game with lean bulking, it's like, yeah, one, you look cooler while you're bulking because you're leaner and you see your muscle better. And then two, you can cut for a shorter amount of time because you have less body fat. And cutting for a shorter amount of time means being unhappy for a shorter amount of time. And then it also means bulking for a longer amount of time, which means growing more muscle. So lean bulking is the way to go. This is how you do it, guys. This is the blueprint right here of how to mitigate your surplus size. So yeah, happy bulking, fellas. I'll see you in the next one.